Totaldrive is proven to help instructors earn more, work smarter, and improve pupil pass rates. If you're a driving instructor, you need to try Totaldrive by starting your completely free 30-day trial at www.totaldrive.co.uk.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. Thank you very much for taking the time to come along. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Peter Harvey. You probably have heard all sorts of bad stories about me, but some of it's true, not all of it. We're going to do a little presentation this afternoon about the new tip system and a bit of the standards check. If you think I'm going to teach you how to change your life and run the standards check, that's not going to happen, but I'm going to try and give you some tips because although I represent the MSA, I'm a full-time driving instructor. That's what I do for a living. That's what I get paid for every day in life. So what I'm going to try and do is give you some tips that will help you along with how you do your job, not just for the standards check, but for life in general as you go along. Please feel free to ask questions as we go along. If you feel as if I'm speaking too quick, that's because I'm trying to get it over with. Please put your hand up, don't worry about that. Okay, so topics we're going to cover today, amongst other things. So, test information programme. Presume you all know about it now. You've all heard about it in some way or another. Come in, if you want to even come around the side here, over towards if that young lady could maybe take her seat back a wee bit. Sorry, yeah. You might get a couple in there, maybe sit on the edge of the table, those kind of things. We used to have any of you come from Scotland? We used to have an advert at home, a company called Goldberg's, and it was what we called the Goldberg's bus. And the advert started, there was people getting off the back of the bus, and they just never stopped. Just kept going and going and going and going, all get into the shop. Anyway, so these are the things that we're going to do. We're going to carry on with. Okay, so you'll all have heard about the TIP programme. You'll all know what it's all about, or I hope you do. Have any of you been invited for a standards check because of this new programme? No? Don't be embarrassed to put your hand up. That's really good, because since this came in, I've not dealt with anyone that's been invited to take a standards check because of any of these standards and any of these criteria. What I'm going to try and say to you or do to you today is say, don't worry about it. If you're doing what the average person is doing, you're not going to be in any trouble. Nobody's going to be bothering you. So, the driver faults, you have to have 5 or more consistently. You have to have every second test failing on a serious or dangerous fault. And the driving examiner has to be taking physical intervention. Not, could you just move forward a wee bit so they can get in the door. Not verbal intervention, only physical intervention. So, that's the fourth one, the fourth criteria. That's what the DVSA is right, or say they think is right. Please feel free to take photographs of the screen if you want to, don't worry about it. I'll send you the copyright laws later. So that's how they work out what the pass rate is. So as you can see up here, it doesn't show up very well on the television screen, 51.6%. But because it's 51.6% across the country, on average. Some test centres are a bit more, some test centres are a bit less. But the fact is that it's 51.6%, but somebody in the DVSA thought, well, the average is that, let's set it higher than that. None of us really know quite why that was, other than to try and make you do better and make sure that you bring up people that are always going to pass. Could you come in a bit, please? I'm not having anybody sitting in my lap, that's not on. Really sorry, they changed the room. See, can you manage that a little bit more? Can you even maybe move your seats forward a wee bit? And of course you can't stand in the front. That's it, if you could just move your seats forward, maybe people can get in at the back. As long as you don't block the young man's, dear me. You look out the back. Dear, where are they all coming from? Who brought in the coach? In you come. See if you can come in and close the door while you're at it. Where was I? I can't see the screen anymore. So, in the DVSA's wisdom, they decided that the best thing to do was make it a higher rate. So of course people always worry about that. Now I don't want you to put your hand up, but after the pandemic and we managed to start to get back to work, were any of you in a situation that you had people up for tests that didn't pass, even though you thought they were going to? Yeah, me. I'll be first to put my hand up, right? Because we were in a terrible situation that people were, the theory test certificate was about to expire, right? So you were letting people sit the test, not because they weren't capable drivers or they couldn't do it, but they were going to lose their money and their 2 years had run out and they wouldn't extend it. As any of our members will know that we fought really hard to get them to do it. They did it in Ireland, but they wouldn't do it in this country. And then they give you arguments like, oh, well, you know, the dangers to road safety, but yet they suspended MOTs, which is the worst, you know. Yeah, exactly. You know, that was the argument I used to the minister, but he had a million bits of information that said, well, actually, you might be wrong, but never physically said, well, it's because of the money or anything like that. Right? And our argument was always, what else can it be about? It's all about more money, right? You know, making these people sit it again. Why? You know, extend it for a year and be done with it, let everybody get by, but they wouldn't do it. So anyway, that's your fourth criteria. But the most important one for some of you that I've been speaking to over this weekend, and I speak to regularly when you phone into the office, a lot of you are the only people that I know. I said I haven't spoke to any, but there are some people who will finish up in this system to get a standards check because they do less than 5 tests a year. That's the major criteria. Over everything else, if you don't show up with 5 tests a year, you're going to get a standards check. Okay? So when you get that standards check, that means that you, for whatever reason, you didn't show up in the stats. Right? Now that might be that your stats weren't right, the examiner wrote it down wrong at the time. And I'm going to show you the test information data sheet in a minute that you can all have access to if you want to, if you haven't already done it. So mistakes like that happen. The other thing that happens is that people decided for whatever reason that they're going to take the certificate out the window. If you take a certificate out the window, you don't get any credit for pass or fail, whatever happens, but you're not going to have 5 tests a year. So unless you're really good, you could think those are the 5 people that are absolutely going to pass, you'll be okay. I have a good system at home because my son's a driving instructor as well. But when I've taken up for test, if they're a bit iffy, I just put his certificate in the window. Don't tell him, but he keeps wondering why he's getting standard checks all the time. I say, I don't know, son, you must be. So that's what the forum looks like. It's not very easy to read in here. Have any of you had one already? Have any of you seen one? Yeah, 1 or 2 of you, right? Did you, just as a matter of interest, did you agree with the information that was on it? Yeah, was it pretty accurate? Good. Reasonably accurate, yeah, reasonably accurate. Anybody else? Yeah, much better than some of you are been around a little while and you know how they used to do it. And they tried this years ago. And the reason they stopped was because it was so inaccurate. It was nothing like what you were actually taking up for tests. But what I want to do is show you the top part. Right? So this is the bit that really matters. And I was going to walk across in front of you, but I can't do that anymore. But if you look across the top, it tells you, not the ADI number, right? But it tells you about the person, this particular ADI, many tests they had. So what I want you to look at are the parameters that they got wrong. Okay? Just, excuse me, going just a little bit. So if you look at these bits here, so 4.35 driving errors, 0.62, so that's higher than what they're allowed. You add on the dangerous, they're much higher than what they're allowed. Examiner took action. So in this particular instructor's case, there's at least 2 of the criteria that they've went over to fail to get called for a standards check. Yes? No. Person won't get a standards check because they've not done enough bad things yet. They have to have 3 out of the 4. Right? So basically, you've got to kill an examiner when you're on a test. This little bit here, you may want to take a photograph of. If you haven't seen this report, that data analysis sheet that I just showed you, and you want to have one, please take a note at the bottom. But I don't know, is the technician still there or no? Might be worth, I don't know if you can turn the lights down a bit, you can see that better. So We spoke to DVSA about this because there used to be a simple little 4-digit omni@dvsa.gov.uk. And we said, listen, can you make this a little bit easier for driving instructors? That's what they come up with. All that lot instead of 4 little letters. Now the bits at the bottom are worth writing down because that's what you, if you write in for it, you email in for it, you have to be able to give that information. Right, so you need to know your own PR number, the number, telephone number that's registered to your school. You need to be able to use to prove. Anybody else still writing, or you all finished? Okay.
Can I just ask, are you drawing attention to yourself by requesting one of those or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
But not supervisors anymore, I can't say that. Enforcement officers are not very busy. They're sitting about waiting for you to call in and so they can come and see you. But everybody that's in here today, now that we've scanned your barcodes, you'll all be getting a standards check. They're not too distant. No, absolutely nothing to do with it. Right? Promise you it doesn't. It's a totally different department, and it's an odd, it's like everything in the DVSA, it's all a bit odd how they would do things, but it's a totally different department that looks at the analysis to make sure that nobody's corrupting the information, anything like that. So they just punch in your ADI number, and that's why you have to prove who you are. They punch in your ADI number, it'll go from date to date, like that one I showed you. We'll go from, in a rolling year, it goes from date to date. Whatever information that's in the system for your test data will come up, they'll print it out, we'll email it to you. Right? But if it's not right, sometimes what's happened is that the examiner has written in your, not your reference number, but the badge number. The same amount of digits, they just put the wrong number in. So of course you think, well, that's 3 tests that I had that passed, but they're not there. Just write back and tell them that's the case, but give them the number, the certificate number, and they'll collate it for you, send you the proper information. Okay, so what have we got? We'll do these quickly. Engagement call. Any had an engagement call yet? Shouldn't have had. Oh, okay. So the new system with this, you're supposed to get an engagement call from the, let's call him an examiner, not the enforcement officer. More people. Can anybody move that wall back a bit? Come in. If you can get in, come in. I'm going to charge now. All the folk that are standing will take £2 off them. What do you think? I forgot that was live. So, somebody across the world will be saying that Peter Harvey's written instructors. So we'll do them quickly. But 8 weeks before, the examiner is going to phone you up. How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing okay, thank you very much. Now, straight away, you have a choice. You can refuse to have the engagement call. And if you refuse to have the engagement call, that's the end of it. Ta-ra, bye-bye. I'll see you when your test is. They'll be telling you to book your test, but you'll book your test, which will be 8 weeks away or whatever it's going to be. But they'll give you a good bit notice to make sure that you book it in plenty of time. If you decide to continue with it, the information you'll discuss will be what you've seen in the report that I've just showed you. Nothing to do with your standards check. Right, you know, people are phoning me all the time and saying, Peter, I don't know what I'm going to do in 8 weeks' time. I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow, never mind what you're going to do in 8 weeks' time with your people. So he's not going to discuss your standards check, but what he will discuss is things that are reoccurring on your driving tests, right? So if you get faults coming up continuously, like, you know, move away under control, or mirrors before, or something like that, he'll say something like, did you realise that you had that? You might honestly say, well, no, I didn't really, even though your people are passing, but it's just a reoccurring fault that's coming up. So they're kind of trying to give you a little heads up and say, maybe you should have a look at that. Maybe that's what you're going to do. But people are kind of then saying to me, but he told me I have to do mirrors before. No, he didn't. What he wanted to discuss. If you decide not to have the call at all, he doesn't discuss it, doesn't do anything, thanks very much, bye-bye. But the thing that's different is you don't get sent the report automatically. If you take the engagement call, he sends you a report and also a copy of everything that he wrote down in the conversation. I say he, it could be a she, of course, but they wrote down in the conversation you had. So you've got a copy of it, you know what you're talking about. And very often people get the report and they think, do you know what, I've got not a bad pass rate, but I didn't realise I was getting all those faults. Because these days you don't see anything anymore. Unless the candidate actually gives it to you, you don't really know what's going on. So well worth getting a copy and knowing for yourself what's going on. What else you got? Oops, everybody got that one, I hope. Right, now we get to the serious bit. Before we get to run out of this, any other questions about what we just spoke about?
If you present less than 5 tests a year,
Yep.
would you still receive the engagement call?
Yeah, you still get you still get the engagement call. And at that point, excuse me, at that point, the examiner, after the discussion, may well say to you, don't bother booting a standards check. I understand why you don't turn up at the test centre. That's fine. Because you do all, fleet work or whatever it is, right? There's lots of ADIs out there that don't do the job every day. But there's a good reason for them not doing it. But the system doesn't know why you're not doing it. So that can happen. It's also possible, and I live in the real world, but it's also possible the nice examiner will phone you up and say, how you doing, Jim? Let's say, how you doing, Jim? You're, just to let you know, you're doing really well. You're one of the better instructors at your test centre. I'm really impressed with your results. Thank you. We won't be giving you a standards check this year. That's what could happen. The other thing you need to remember is that all of us are due to have a standards check within your 4-year period. What they're trying to do, because they don't have enough staff, is target the people that really need a standards check. Right? Now, I showed you a good one there, but I've seen some of these as examples. Now, somebody that's done over 200 tests a year, I don't know quite how you do that, but over 200 tests a year with less than a 10% pass rate. That's what they're trying to get at. Because very often you look at their stats and they've come up quite well in the last check test, or standards check, whatever it was, and they've scored quite well. But what they're bringing up to the test centre ain't matching up with what's there. So what's the point of keeping coming and seeing somebody that may only be a low B, a 32 or a 33, but they've got a 50, 60, 70% pass rate, they're actually doing really well, but they fall apart in a standards check. No point of going to see them, they're actually doing a good job. But the other one, and maybe you would say, maybe that person's just a good business person. They're in it for the money, they don't really care one way or the other. To teach people to drive, they pass or they fail. What does it matter? Because if they don't pass today, they'll come back another day. Now, fortunately, there's not all that many people out there like that, but there are some. Sir, you're not one of them, are you?
Two questions. Newly qualified ADIs, do they fall under the same process?
Well, in your initial, when you qualify, you still have a period of time where you're loosely under supervision, if you like, right? So they'll have a look, you'll have a standards check at some point in the middle of that, but not because of this, right? You have a standards check, which is really, in the good old days, where it was a kind of, you're doing fine, keep that up. Don't do that anymore, you might be better doing it like this, that kind of thing. But since it was changed to the new style Part 3, they don't need to do that nearly as much as they used to. Second question?
Second question is, if a pupil, you're presenting lots of pupils who are passing, so you've got a high pass rate, however they're incurring quite a lot of driving faults, but still passing, do them driving faults still go against you?
Well, they go against you in as much as they go on your data sheet. But it's not going to be a target to call you up and say, because the people are passing. So it's not going to be a target to pull you in. But it might be in the engagement call. It might be a little conversation that you would have. Because very often people don't take note of it. And what I should have done, I'm not sure we've got enough now, but what I should have done is said to you, what we've done is produced a little document. Some of you might have it with your trainers that you're with, which kind of gives you a rough idea. You can take a note of your own tests, the people who the examiner was, all those kind of things, and work across the board. So you can give yourself a little idea of what might show up in this as you go along. So I don't know best to do this. If I just give them to you and you pass them along, everybody happy to do that. Once you get nearer the back, some of the backs of them look a bit odd because the printer went a bit wild when I was trying to do it in a hurry. But please take one so you can take it away, copy it as you go along. Any other questions before I go into the other bit? Right?
During COVID times,
yes?
we were off the road a lot.
Yep.
But you're saying you're going to do 5 in a year.
Yep.
How does that work?
It's a running year.
1 a year.
No, it's a running year.
Oh, running year.
Right, so from you started back until the next time, right? Unless examiner at a test centre decides, do you know what, I'm sick of this. Every time I get in this car, the man's trying to kill me, whatever that is. There might be something that would trigger it, but in general, it's a running year before it happens. The other question that people will ask is, I've had a standards check under the TIP system, right, under this new system. They've decided that we want to see you. Whatever it says in your system is not very good. So you've been called for a standards check. You go and you take your standards check, you take some training, you do whatever you have to do, you take your standards check and you pass. All right? The first question I would ask is, does that mean the system's not working or you're just falling apart at the time? But you pass your standards check. Once you pass your standards check, when will I get the next call through the tip system? It's a rolling year, so it'll be another year before it'll happen again. So people say, well, what if I get another 5 failures, one after the other? It's not going to make any difference. It will happen through the rolling year. Because we all know that your passes average out. Sometimes you take up a run of people and you think, God, I can't do anything right just now. Then all of a sudden you can't do anything wrong. It happens to us all. I've been a driving instructor for, I'll tell you how many years, quite a lot of years, but over 40 years, been a driving instructor. And sometimes you think, oh, God, what's going on here? You're tearing your hair out because people are not passing. And usually one serious fault, maybe no driver errors or one driver error. So they're not bad drivers, they just did something daft on the day. But then, of course, when they come back up, you've got maybe 6, 7, 8 in a trot that all pass. Right? So it all balances out over it. That's why it has to be over a rolling period of time. Any other questions? I'm just conscious there's so many of you. Yeah, go.
Yeah, I mean, I was shielding.
Yeah.
Half, but not doing as many as I'm now.
Yep.
Double fleet. So was that probably then?
I'm shielding as well. You've seen this lot.
So where's that put me? Because I'm doing less than I used to. But I'm doing more on the fleet side and people side.
Yep.
But that was I'm doing less tests.
Will you do 5 in a year?
Maybe not now.
Maybe not. Well, then when you get your standards check, call up, give us a shout and I'll try and help you out. But just, honestly, without being funny about it, just tell the truth. That, that's the thing that you have to do. You've not done 5 tests a year for a reason. Not because you're taking, what they're trying to do is stop you taking your budget. Well, except when I put my sons in, I take. Obviously, I wouldn't do that. Anybody else? God, I never realised the car park was so big. Wow, would you pop up? Right, okay, so now we're going to get to the dreaded email that tells you you're going to get a standards check, right? And everybody hates it, right? You know it's always going to be email now. In case any of you are still thinking it might come by post, don't do anything by post with DVSA anymore. They can't afford the bills. Right? But everything will come by email, unless your email bounces back or they don't get a reply within the 14-day period. Then they'll send it to the last recorded address you had for, with them to tell you to book a standards check. If you don't reply to that, they'll just take you off the register within 28 days. Remember the association, give us a shout and we'll do what we can for you. Where are we? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I can't see that anymore. Oh, some left. Yeah. Everybody at the back, get one. Yeah. By the way, they're £1 each. Come to Scotland, it's the only way. No, it's the only way to do it. Right, thanks. So, you get the letter, make up your mind what you're going to do. Book it online. Go online, book it straight away. The people worry about it, say, well, I can't get one. Just go to the bottom and press the bit that says book to hold. That's you done your bit. Let DVSA then decide when you're going to get one. Right? You can't work miracles. If the test date's not there, it's not there. Don't do it. You have full choice, the date and time, and then, of course, which people should I take? Now, that's always the tricky bit, isn't it? And that's why I said to you earlier, an examiner can't ask you 8 weeks before who you're going to ring up for a standards check. Well, how would you know? Any thoughts on who you should take?
Somebody who's good.
Okay, that's one thought. Any others?
Somebody's alive.
Somebody's alive, yeah, that helps. That's a definite.
Somebody you can interact with.
There you go, somebody you can interact with. My advice would be, try to think about a standards check, and I'm sure I'll get shot with some of the people that are watching this online, but try to think of a standards check as what you do every day in life. Right? Most of you people are doing well, you're doing okay, you're getting people through their driving test, you get the odd one that fails, but then you get out and you fix it and you do whatever you have to do. Otherwise you wouldn't be here today. Right? You're all good at what you do. What I find is people tend to change the way they do things because it's a standards check. What I would tend to do is pick whatever date I've picked. Let's say it's Thursday the 12th of July at 10 o'clock in the morning. Who would I usually have on Thursday the 12th or Thursday at 10 o'clock in the morning? That's who's going for the standards check. That's how I do it. You might not fancy that idea. Now, I've had the odd occasion where I think, no, it's not, that's not going to happen, right? We swap somebody for 10 to 11 or whatever. The reason I try to get people to do it that way, if that person lets you down, or, you know, they haven't before, but something goes wrong, they let you down, you can always pick the next one. Phone them, see if you can get them early, tell them what the problem is, that kind of thing. Without getting yourself all stressed out about, I've planned out a whole route of how I'm going to do things. It's important you plan your lesson, but it's really important that you're in control of what's going to happen. So, that lot I'm sure you won't be able to see, but it took me ages to get that little car to do that. I was hoping if the lights were out, it would have looked better, but it's obviously not. But it's just a little graph. Again, please feel free to take a photograph if you can get it. I don't know, the little gentleman at the back, the technician, is it possible to put the lights down a bit at all? No? And you can't get out of there to find out? All right, oh, Jesus. Well, that's him down. You might like it better that way. I'll certainly get a better chance of being able to take the photograph. It's just a little route map, if you like, of things that you ought to be doing, things you ought to be thinking about. Please feel free. Does that mess up your plan with the... Does it? Okay. We'll put them back on as soon as I've taken them, sorry. So, whoever put the lights off, could you put the 10 bulb back in the right, so that's just a little route map round about your lesson plan, the things that you're going to do, how you're going to do them, what you might do. Probably what you do every day when someone gets into the car. Oh, you want me to come back? You all right?
Got it.
Good. That's the regulations. That's why you have to have a standards check. As well as the fact that you pay £300 a year to get one. Not a year. Sorry. I let that slip out there. That's what it's going to be. £300 for 4 years. Right? When you think about it, it's not a lot of money for what you do. It's a lot of money when you come to pay it at the time and all. But so the regulator has to supply you with a standards check to make sure you're up to the standard. But what they're looking to do now is not be taking people that they don't need to see. Work on the people they do need to see that they can make a difference, and let the other people just continue. That's not to say if you want to, you couldn't phone up and ask for a standards check. Put your hand up if you've ever done that. I do that all the time. You know, people, staff at different organisations will say to me, oh, but you know, people might want a standards check, they might want to have one. I'd rather go to the dentist. Okay, so where are we? Marking system. The new system as it is just now, you know the box that we're just showing you there. What's across the bottom, right? You know, you're in a 3, 2, 1, should have stayed in your bed. Don't bother coming out. Right? When you start your standards check, everything's in a 3. You've got 51 points when you started. That's it. Secret, don't move the car. And you're going to do fine. So that just explains the competencies to you. But as I said, if you get any zeros, you might as well have stayed in the house. Right? So what you have to do is figure out how you're going to plan your lesson to get the best out of the person that you've got at the time. I'm very aware that we're going through this fairly quickly now. That's how the grading system works. So if you score, your scores are up here. If you score under 31 or 31 or under, unfortunately you didn't make it. Because the majority of people that don't make it is usually to do with risk assessment. Right? And I'll try and explain a little bit about that in a minute. Some of you that have been to other things today talking about this, we're maybe going over the same ground. Any questions before I go? Okay, good. So, top part of the sheet is split into, well, the sheet's split into 3 different things. So you know the top part of the sheet is all about your lesson planning. Right? Figure out what you've got to do. So you've got 17 topics, which gives you your 51 points throughout it. But please don't think you have to do all 17 topics. That's impossible. Certainly not going to do it in the new system, which is only 40 minutes. In the good old days, it used to be an hour. And for me, that was a bit of a nightmare because I only do 45-minute lessons. Right? And I've always done 45-minute lessons. It's just the way it's been. I've just always done it that way. Probably because I can't keep my eyes open after that. Right? But, you know, 45 minutes and then you extend it to an hour with this same person was a bit tricky. Work our way around about how you do that. But this new system, what you have to think about is you only get 40 minutes. You get a 45-minute overall period, but you get 40 minutes during the test. So you have to cut down somewhere in how you're going to do things. So let's say you're lesson planning at the beginning, when you're going through all the rigmarole of, remember last week, I'm going to use roundabouts because they're easy. Remember last week we were doing roundabouts, and when you were coming down to them, what did you, well, I'd do it the other way about. What did we score? I usually use for 1 to 7. I don't do 10, because I find it too easy for people to jump on 5. Right, and then you've got to get them one way or the other. So most people will say, boys will always say always a 6. Yeah, and I say, yeah, right. And girls are usually a bit more modest. They'll say, oh, was it a 4? You say it was a 4. And then all I say to them is, how are we going to get that up a bit? What do we need to do to get it up a bit? So if I've done my job properly last week, they know what was going wrong. And they might say, we were coming into them too fast, Peter. I just wasn't braking early enough to get the gear, which is always a problem because I only drive automatics now. But never mind. And the good old days of manual. So they just didn't have enough time to do what they had to do. So what I'm looking for them to tell me is what went wrong and what do I need to do different to make it better. Just like you do every day. But what you're going to have to do in this new system, and I'm told that it's going to stay at this 40-minute period, what you have to do now is do all that discussion before the examiner gets in the car. Right? So some test centres you're allowed in, most test centres you should be, but he doesn't want to hear all the big bit of gumph that you used to do anymore. He wants to hear the very basics, what happened, maybe what score, what we're going to do, and agree what's the word I'm looking for, a standard of talk through. We're going to talk you through the whole thing. I would suggest that it's probably better to take somebody that's done it before, you know, instead of picking a beginner. And no disrespect to you, but I wouldn't take somebody that's really good. Because if they do it really good, what am I going to do? Right? I'm sitting about there, oh, pick somebody that's in the middle of the flow, not early stages, right? But somebody that's in the middle of the flow, they're doing okay, and it's something that's suitable for them. Thing you need to always remember, if you get out there and they're doing better than you thought they were going to do, what would you do if it wasn't the standards check? I don't mean you to answer. But you would probably move them on to something else. But because sometimes you hear information from all sorts of sources that say you have to stick to what you said you were going to do, you have to be in the real world in your standards check. Let's turn it the other way. Something goes drastically wrong. We come out at a junction, almost run into a bus as it's passing the end of us. What would you do in a real lesson? You'd probably stop. You're all here, so you all did stop. Then you would get out, get to someplace safe, talk about it. But for some reason, people have decided now that we're not allowed to do that anymore. Something serious happens, you need to make sure you fix it. Never mind what the plan was. You know, the plan might have been roundabouts, but what happened was something to do with something else. And you know, people keep saying to me, you're not allowed to stop. Of course you're allowed to stop. How are you going to tell people? Some of it you can do when you're moving, but if it's a serious fault, you've had to take action or do anything about it, get the car in, talk about it, deal with how you're going to fix it, and fix it. Go around again, fix it. And if that does it, then get back to your lesson plan. But if you haven't time or you just can't get back to the lesson plan, deal in the serious fault, deal with that. Next bit, second part of it again, risk management. Lots of people fail in risk management, mainly because something goes wrong. The bus, for instance. And they'll say something like, oh, that was a bit close. You know, that kind of thing. Is that really managing the risk? The fact that you've pushed the pedal down that far, you nearly went through the floor, those kind of things, right? But then, in your head, because it's a standards check, I'm not supposed to be doing this. Yes, you are. Just fix whatever the problem is. Ask as we go along, because I'm very conscious of people looking at me for time. We've only another 75 slides to go, you'll be fine. And then the bit at the bottom. Trick is to make sure that you cover the competencies as you go along. But you cover them every day in life. Every time you're doing a driving lesson, you cover all of these competencies. Maybe not all of them, but you cover them in stages. And what I'm continually saying to people is, listen, in the real world, you might have 40 hours to teach somebody to do this. Why are you trying to do it in 40 minutes? It's just not going to happen. Make them better at what they do. Where have we got to? These are the list of the things that are going wrong, right? So in this particular one, this is the 5th most popular topic. You can see that there. That's, when I say the most popular topic, this is the 5th, let's do it from 1 to 5. This is the 5th most popular thing that people fail a standards check on. Just take the call, it's all right, make me a lesson. Maybe somebody for the DVSA saying, tell him to shut up. Right, and then we go to number 4. Right, and there you go. So the 4th most popular thing. You can all see them from the back there, you can see what they're all about. But it's something that you did wrong in that planning part of the lesson. All right, I'm conscious of phones up and me walking in front of them all the time. There you go, number 3. Some of these may not be a surprise to you at all. It's the number 1 one that really rips my knitting. Sorry, that's not a term that you'll use down here, I don't suppose. That's my granddaughter taught me that. She's 20, so I'm just trying to keep up with the kids. Yeah, I know. You're thinking, how can you have a granddaughter of 20? Yeah. And then, how are you doing with your photographs? All right. So what's that one? Anybody want to give me a little example of what might happen there? There you go. You're not allowed to do that anymore. But that's the kind of thing. It's just being so out of the line of where the people is. And you think in your head. And that's why I said to you, don't be afraid to change it. Because sometimes you have a people out last week, and it was all a bit iffy. And you think, well, this is what we're going to try and sort next week. And they went home and reflected on what you said and thought about it, looked it up. YouTube, God bless us all. But they'll come back, and all of a sudden they can do it. Right, it's maybe not perfect, but it's a lot better than you thought, which is the worst thing that can happen to you in the standards check, because, wow, then just change the goalposts. It has to be relevant to them. Little tip I'm going to give you, and, you have to think about how you take your training off and what they say. My advice to everybody is, once you've decided what you think the lesson plan is going to be, maybe 3 or 4 weeks before it, whoever the person is that you've decided, have a backup. So if it's not that one, it's going to be the other one. So if that's not the lesson plan, I'll do this one, right? It's important you have that. It's important you have make sure you have your area in your head. You know where you're going, you know what you're going to be doing. I'm going to say this out loud. I'll do that first. Right, I'm going to say this out loud. Practice it all you like with everybody else. You've got another 25 pupils or 30 pupils or 10 pupils or 2 pupils, whoever it is. Practice it with the other ones. Don't practice it with the person you're going to take in the standards check. I sit in the back of cars all the time, a lot more often now than I did the last 2 years. Within 5 minutes, I know these people have been doing this for days, weeks, hours, because everything they say is the person's done it before he's got the words out or she's got the words out. Examiners are not stupid. Very often the examiner's sitting in the back and he's just, forget it. What's the point? Because everything that's being done, they're doing it far too well. So then that lesson is not commensurate with that person's ability. Then you have to say, well, that's my fault because I was doing this far too often before this and the person could do it too well. Obviously, you want to introduce them into some of it, but do the practicing with other people that it's safe to do it with. I don't mean every one of your pupils will be able to do it on that route, that kind of thing, but there will be some that are about the same level. Practice with them. Practice your wording, practice how you're going to say it, practice your timing, so that when you come to do it, you look slick, but the person doesn't look as if they've done it 400 times before Bob's sat in the back. And then the number 1, my pet hate. In the old standards check, the most popular thing that people failed a standards check for was not moving the goalposts. I'm going to do this, I don't care what happens. I'm sticking to this lesson plan. You're just a dumpling. Why are you driving like this today? It's not their fault. It's your fault. If it's not what you're asking them to do is not working, give them something else to do. Change it. And people seem to think, oh, if I change it, the examiner will think I didn't know what I was doing. It's much more likely to think you didn't know what you're doing if you don't change it. Just fix it. Do something about it.
That actually happened to me on my last standards check.
Yep.
Just became really, really nervous because
Yeah.
there was an extra official in the back and he completely fell apart and I stopped the lesson completely down. So rather than you identifying the hazard and telling me,
Yeah.
you say, I'll talk you through it. And the examiner said at the end, it was that helped.
Yeah, made the difference. Yeah.
Because I stopped and just took
And well done for doing it. You know, that people just don't realise how much a difference that makes to an examiner. Because he knows that's not what you would do. Or in 2 hours' time, that's not what you're going to do. Just show him or her what you do all the time. And thank you for telling us that. You know, that's the important thing. Own up to, you know, all right, I got this wrong. We all do mistakes. We all get it wrong. You know, some people make mistakes every day. But the trick for you and everybody else is knowing how to fix it, as I'm sure you teach your learners.
Can I just ask a question? Because I'm going to be coming into this profession, and I've been.
Don't.
I hate to admit it, when you see where I'm coming from, I've been teaching for 22 years in
Yep.
primary school, so I'm used to Ofsted and people walking in, but I have my own style
Yep.
of teaching, and what I'm petrified of is not getting the script.
Try not to make it scripted. Try to make it. I'm going to turn it around on you. You've got a class full of little Johnnies and Jennies.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and 75% of Johnnies are okay, 80% of Jennies are okay. The balancer just need a bit extra help. What do you do with them?
Yeah.
Just do the same. Don't script it. You know, most people who script it, and I have to say, and I don't want to insult anybody sitting in the room, but often that's what goes wrong in a part 3. People have a scripted lesson, they've done it 1,000 times, but then this person that they take on the day does it better, doesn't do it right, falls apart because the person sitting in the back. The little tip I would give you, and thank you for bringing it up, thing that's hard for most of you is having somebody sitting in the back of the car. A lot of you, I'm sure, go out and sit in the back of a driving test. Don't like it, but you do it. Right? And sometimes you don't agree with the result. Most of the time I don't agree with the result. But nevertheless, imagine how that examiner feels every time you get in the car. Somebody's looking over his shoulder all the time. A bit like yourself with Ofsted. If you can, and you're friends, and you're in local groups, and you know one another, go out and sit with it in the back with one of your mates. Just for a couple of lessons. To let the person that's going to sit the standards check know how it feels. Somebody sitting there. And I don't mean being critical and, you know, you're hopeless what you do and all that. Just a bit of moral support. And then you do it the other way around for them. That's one of the best tips that I give to people. Because they get used to someone sitting in the back. Because every time you look in the mirror and this big growling face is looking at you, think, well, what's that all about, right? All those little things will help to make it better for you. Any other questions about this bit? Because I don't know what's next. Improvise, adapt and overcome. Just 3 words you might want to use. What I should have said at the start of this lesson if I hadn't been so nervous and worried about what was going to happen next when all these people bring me into the corner. What I try to do in every lesson is use those 3. Something goes wrong, improvise. And that doesn't work, adapt. That might mean change your lesson plan altogether. Do something totally different. Slap in the back of the head if you want to, but maybe not. You're not allowed to do that anymore. And between you, you'll overcome the issue, whatever that was going to be. What have we got now? I remembered all these yesterday. I'll just flick these up quickly in case somebody wants to take one photograph. That's the five things altogether that people fail on mostly. Not all of them usually, but any one of them will do it. How are we doing for time, Ray? Oh dear. Everybody okay? Questions? No questions.
I've got one. Going back quite a number of slides, when you were talking, when you were going through your standards check, the first one, you were saying that it's now been dropped from an hour to 40 minutes.
Yes.
And you said that now you're expected to sort of determine what your lesson is going to be with your pupil
before you get to the test centre. Yep.
So how does from the other side of the coin?
How does the examiner know?
How are they going to determine that you are now being centred learning? Because part of the Q&A there is determining what he's sort of trying to get.
So when you get into the test centre to meet the examiner, he's going to say to you, how you doing, Fred? What you got for me today? And you're going to say, I've got a 25-year-old woman, she said 175 lessons, I'm going to teach her how to move away and stop. Whatever it is, right? Obviously it's not going to be that, but it's going to be something, you know, that's commensurate. So you're telling them any lessons, what they've done, what happened the last time. Maybe if you want the score that you gave them, if you use the scoring system, and if you don't, you don't. But if you do, I find it a good way of getting the conversation going at the beginning. Then tell the examiner what you've agreed, and tell them that you've agreed. This is what the candidate wants to do today. This is their lesson goal. This is what they want to achieve, and this is how we think we're going to achieve it. And sometimes they'll say to you, is that what they're going to say when we get in the car? And you might say, well, I hope so, but you know, they could change their mind. And how many times have you all done that? You've asked the person a question and you know what they're going to say, and then they don't. You think, what happened there? Or they don't answer. That's the worst thing. And that's why it's better to try and ask the question that they'll give you the answer straight away, right? You know, you're in amongst it. To finish off on that, at the end, instead of doing the big long debrief in the car, condense it on the way back. Your last couple of minutes on the way back to the test centre, discuss what you've done. If you can, if it's safe. Discuss what you've done so the debrief is done almost before the car stops. And then a quick brief run over of, right, okay, how did you feel today? How did that come with your score from last week? Where do you think you would be today? Etc., etc. What do you think about next week? What do you think we should be doing? How do you feel about it? I think we should do this, that or the other. And that's how it's done now. Right? Examiners still do the same amount of tests a day, but it gives them more time to do their paperwork when they go in. That's short for putting the kettle on. Okay. So this bit is important. Right? We're all professional driving instructors. We all do what we do on a daily basis, and we all show the best example. And you tell your pupils, you say, now listen, it's against the law to use a mobile phone when the car's moving. You know you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be talking about that. Okay, do you understand that? You understand the rights and the wrongs? And then the phone goes and they go, hello, Peter here, can I help you? Right? Practice what you preach. Display a good example all the time. You know, and people say, well, I do. But I pass cars every day in life. And in most modern cars, have got Bluetooth in them. Why do you need to pick the phone up? You know, and especially now, you get 6 penalty points, then you're coming to me to try and convince the registrar to keep you on the register. Right, that's just a quick take your pick. Do you like that? Take your pick. That's just a summary of what we've kind of rattled through here. Really sorry all this has been a bit quick. Wow, never seen many selfies in my life. Okay, no more phones up, everybody happy? Okay, and the last little bit, trying to remember the old system still work. Explain, so talk through what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, agree with what level of conversation that's going to be, how much is going to go. Demonstration, let's talk about that as a talk through when we get out the car. And it might be the people, as they did in my last standards check, we'd agreed what we were going to do, and I said to the people, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to talk you through it? Do you want me, etc.? No, I'll do it myself. And I thought, well, that's not part of the plan. What are you doing? And he said, I said, okay then. You sure? He said, yeah. So before we got to the first roundabout, it was pretty evident that wasn't going to work. So I said to him, well, I'll get you a little hand, talk you through it. That's all you need to do. And the validation or demonstration, some people call it demonstration, explain, demonstrate, and validate at the end, or practice if you like. What happens a lot in standards check, people do all these things and say, I'm going to do this, but then they don't let them do it. You speak too long, you talk too long, you haven't given yourself enough time to say, right, sorted a little problem, let them do it. If they get it wrong, you can do a little bit of verbal help, ask them a question, do whatever they need to do, but the examiner needs to see that they've learned something from what you did today. And that's why I said don't take a really good pupil, because if they drive too well, you've picked the wrong lesson. They had no idea. The examiner can't say, because anybody could have taught the person to drive. My son could have taught him to drive, but I just brought him up for the standards check. And he needs to see learning taking place. And you'll be happy to hear. Maybe not as loud as that. Any questions? Any of you that are not MSA members, if you have a quick, you got a question? Oh, you go then.
You go through standards
No, you don't. No, you get 3 attempts at the standards check. If you get less than 30, you will be advised to book another standards check. It will depend on how much below 30 you are, whether it will be in 12 weeks, whether it will be in 8 weeks. If you got scored 5, you're likely to be having a standards check within a month. But it's graded on how low it was at that time. But they will tell you to go ahead and do it, to book it, and within a day you'll be able to book another standards check. You won't get a second engagement call. You only get the one. Get a second standards check. The trick is to make sure that you learn from, get some training, go to an audit trainer, your local trainer, whoever it is, get some training. Don't, far too many people get embarrassed. They say, oh no, I don't want to go. Don't be embarrassed. You're going to lose your livelihood if you don't get some training and get it right. So if you got it wrong that time, go and get some training. If you go to the 3rd attempt and you decide not to take any training, nobody's going to be able to help you after that. You're coming off the register. That's it. So, please don't get yourself in that situation. So any of you that are not members, you want to come and see me and stand wherever we are, 116, doing a special offer today. Thank you all very much for listening. Sorry it's a bit crowded in here. We'd hoped we'd been in the bigger room. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you get any questions, whether you join or you don't, come and see me at the stand. I'll try and answer them for you later on. Cheers. Thank you.
Totaldrive is an award-winning